Oftentimes we forget about them, right? It's like somebody's birthday. If the guy's alive, hey, happy birthday, happy birthday. If the person dies, what happens, right?
No more birthday.
Nada. So here we have a situation where 70 years ago, a lot of young men and women supported the war effort, and we're celebrating the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Sadly, that includes the bombing of two major cities in the area of Japan, Kawasaki and Hiroshima. And what we did to try to connect that and the relationship with the Braceros and to bring it forward to today's event, which is the Voting Rights Act. We're displaying here the American flag. The American flag, if you notice, has 48 stars on it. That flag, this particular flag, was used over coffins, or a coffin. And that's the size of the flag that you would see from the boys and the women coming back from World War II. So that was 70 years ago. So keep in mind, if it wasn't for the victory that we had during that tragic historical event, the war. Thank you very much. All of a sudden I could hear myself now. That's a good thing. Well, I don't know if it's good. You guys can judge on that one.
That's who you ask, right?
Yeah, depends who you ask. So let's not ask anybody. So what we're trying to do is to more than anything express this to young people. We've gone to high schools and colleges and talked to folks about the importance of educating the next generation. Like all of us have been educated because of our parents, our uncles, somebody historically in our family. There's a reason why we're here. Our political support for efforts in our communities as activists and elected officials and stuff. Well, this flag is important to that. And I do apologize for anybody here who's a U.S. Marine, because we need the Marine flag. So we're also honoring the different branches of service, which is need the Marine flag. So where's our Marine at? He was going to run over and get one from the American Legion across the street. But we're working on that one. So anyway, now we're tying that in with the Bracero experience as well, because that's a very historic event in our history and the relationships to the CSO, to LULAC, to all the efforts of all of us has taken part in our personal history. But the Braceros were also an army in themselves. 4.5 contracts were signed. Some people signed a couple of contracts, right? So it wasn't 4.5 million Braceros, but 4.5 contracts were signed. Now I say that specifically because I get corrected every time I say that. So that's significant to understand that. And tragically, what's happened, and I say this tragically because if you start looking at war, and I'll compare the Vietnam War to the Bracero program, both of them lasted 22 years. 22 years. From the time of the first American that got killed in Vietnam, if you Google, you find out the dates on that, and you'll see when we got out of Vietnam, 22 years. The Bracero program lasted 22 years. Here in geographically, Central California, we had a tragedy where a plane went down and 32 people were killed. And Woody Guthrie sings a song called Deportee. And that sings about, the song is about the lack of the names and acknowledgement of the 28 Braceros that died at that accident when the plane went down near Colinga and King City, between the two cities there. So the plane goes down, 28 Braceros killed, four other people, the pilot, co-pilot, stewardess, and the INS agent were recognized in all the public newspapers throughout the United States and in Mexico. But the names of the 28 were not, and they were buried in a mass grave in Fresno. And it wasn't until recently, in 03, Labor Day weekend, 03, and you'll see it in the Bracero room, which is that second one over. You'll see stuff about that in the newspaper that came out. But that talks about those folks that perished in that accident. And when you add the Soledad, the 14 Braceros that were killed in a fire in Soledad, and you add the 32 Braceros that were killed in Chunar, that adds to 74 Braceros. 74 Braceros. In a matter of 22 years, in only three accidents, 74 people died. In the Vietnam War in 22 years, 79 American boys died. and we had a war. And they were killing each other. They were looking to kill. 79 died in Vietnam. And we have a monument here on Laurel Extension. It gives you the names of all those 79 from Monterey County. But geographically, we had 74 that died during the Bracero era. And so you look at it, you have all these people going to work or coming from work, and they die. Here you have a war, and it's 79. So it's like ironic that within the 22 years, this high number of folks are tragically lost like that. So to give you an idea of the treatment or what the attitudes were at that time, it's significant that we respect and acknowledge that, because it's part of our history. And that's what made us who we are today. A lot of us see that. And thank you all folks for coming. Appreciate your presence here today, because we are trying to do something special here to acknowledge an individual in particular, but also the efforts of what brings us all together historically. So from that, the CSO was born. They had a big effort here in California, the CSO, and from there, a lot more effort was given towards voter registration, civil rights and stuff. So yet the United Farm Workers started, and all this effort that all of us might have jumped in at one point in our lives, or we heard about it. So we're all supportive of that. And historically, that brings us to date. But we all knew that after the Voting Rights Act, or the Civil Rights Act in *64, that it lacked a lot more substance to the law. And that's where the Voting Rights Act took place, where people were then given the right, even though they couldn't read, they didn't pay taxes, whatever, if they're American citizens and they're not convicts or they have a felony, they have the right to vote. So it wasn't like you needed to own property like it was before. So there's a lot of things that happen, and there's a lot of detail, but I don't want to bore you guys with detail. I'm sure you guys know more about it than I would. I'm happy to have you guys here. We put the display up to kind of show a relationship from the far room. You'll see the World War II exhibit, and that features a lot of my dad, my uncles and stuff. You'll see 3 guys there. Those were my dad and his 2 brothers that went off to war. Tragically, one did not come back. He died about 2 months before the war was over, which a lot of guys died right before the war was over, even though physically we already knew we won it. It's just a matter of, closing the deal, right, and taking over Berlin. But that's what happened. And you'll see, anytime you see a flag that's got a star, it's got a star, blue star in white, those are represent the number of sons or family members at that household that are at war or in the service. And you'll see one that's there that's got the 3, right next to the picture that's got the 3. That my grandmother had that for years. So I was fortunate that my brothers and sisters and everybody else allowed me to hold on to everything, instead of it being separated. Mija, you should have this. Brother, you should have that. And that happens to all of our lives, right? So all of our stuff, us as activists, us as community-involved representatives, and advocates in agencies, etc., all of us have significant history that's important to all of us. And we're looking for a place to put that, and we're hoping maybe the Monterey County Jail will be a nice place. But we all need to house our stuff. As we get older, somebody's going to decide what happens to our stuff. And we should have a place that we archive and proudly exhibit our history. And so I'm pushing on that one. So it's a shout out for all you guys to keep your stuff, hold on to it, archive it, chronologically by date or issue, whatever it is. Get it ready, because when somebody else gets it, they want to know what's there, not just a bunch of stuff. So take the time. You look back at your history and you really feel proud about it. And I got a note here from the Jefe over here. Is there a Daniel Dodge around? Introduce Daniel Dodge. Ahorita. Mr. Dodge, come forward, please. Mr. Dodge, as you know, Avila, ex-mayor, and presently working with Assemblyman Alejo, doing a great job. And Daniel Dodge, thank you very much. I've known Daniel for a long time. We go back a long ways politically. So, hermano here.
Juan Martinez. Good evening. Buenas noches. Good to see everyone. Thank you everybody for coming. We've been celebrating the Voting Rights Act all month long. It seems like it. And as you can tell, we set up some exhibits around here for just the beginning of what we could be honoring every year here in the city of Salinas. For those that don't know me, my name is Daniel Dodge Sr. I'm a resident of Watsonville. I'm a former elected official. Phew. And former mayor, former city councilman of the city of Watsonville. And I owe my life's experiences directly to the man that we're honoring tonight, Joaquin Avila. I had the pleasure of working as a voting rights paralegal in the law office of Joaquin Avila. I'm going to get touched up a little bit. For many, many years, he's my hero, you know. He's my mentor and my friend. So we're going to move along with the program this evening. And I just wanted to acknowledge those things that I really think that we talked about what a peaceful warrior could be. That's Joaquin Avila. He was his valedictorian at his high school in Compton many years ago. And some other firsts that I'll let my good friend and actually I think he's a very much direct recipient of what we started here many years ago, 20 years ago, when a group of community members got together and decided to challenge the city council election system here in the city of Salinas. It was the beginning. It was the beginning of the political forces that you have today here in Salinas that were attained through Latino political empowerment and the work of Joaquin Avila. We had none before Joaquin Avila. No council members, very few, maybe if any, school district trustees, none. And then Joaquin, utilizing his education, pushes forward to be able to change the world, change the face of California. We've taxed city council levels, county levels, judicial levels, even had a direct effect on electing our representatives in the state legislature. And so it's my honor and pleasure really to allow my good friend, Assemblyman Luis Alejo, to be able to tell us a little bit more about why we're here today. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Everybody, I humbly and very respectfully come here to honor a really great man. I got a man who really paved the way for so many elected officials all over the state of California. And certainly I would not be serving in the California State Assembly today or be serving as a chairman of the powerful Latino Legislative Caucus of California, where we now have 17 assembly members, 5 state senators, including the first Latino president of the Senate, Kevin De Leon out of Los Angeles. But many of us like to recognize that we came into politics because many giants stood before us and paved the way for us, and we stand on the backs of those giants today. So when I heard that there was a group of people in Salinas and Watsonville who remembered the work of this legendary man, who said, we got to do what's possible to bring him back, as our nation is celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was signed by President Johnson on August 6th of that year. Here we are among people who thought it was important enough to bring Joaquin from Seattle, paid for his transportation, paid for his hotel, just so this community, Salinas and Watsonville, could say thanks, many years later, say thanks, because now sometimes people take it for granted, Latino elected officials take it for granted that at one point we had no Latino judges in Monterey County. Now we have even about 5 Latino judges. We had a person in Watsonville, in my hometown, ran for decades, but nobody could ever win till this man named Joaquin Avila came around and said and led the way. And it wasn't easy because there was a lot of people who were afraid when you decided to challenge an entrenched system that would block minority candidates from ever having a local office. It took courageous people to stand up and say there's a better way to hold our local elections, a fairer way, and hopefully energize and excite voters that their voice does matter. And that person who led that way was this lawyer who had just left Maldef and started his own practice and started taking on cases, not only in California, but all throughout the Southwest. And because of that work, that pioneering and trailblazing work, today we have so many elected officials on the school board, as county judges, and even other bodies that still never had Latinos. We have a process for changing those electoral systems. So even districts like the Salinas Valley Memorial Hospital District that never had a Latino or Latina recently changed to district election. And guess what? In a matter of only 2 voting cycles, 3 out of 5 of the board members are now Latinos in Monterey County. It just shows you the powerful work that Joaquin started. First under the federal statute, and those are two cases, well, several cases, but I know two came out of this city and Watsonville. There was Vicky Lopez versus Monterey County that was challenging the redistricting because there was never a Latino judge. So this Latina, Vicky Lopez, and David Serena, who's here, was a plaintiff, Bill Melendez, Crescencio Padilla, and a young lawyer who's no longer with us, but the late Jesse Sanchez from Salinas, had courage to challenge the way Latino districts were being drawn in this county. And it was Joaquin Avila who led that fight, I think on two occasions, twice argued before the U.S. Supreme Court, and it was a precedent-setting case to have a fair election system here in Monterey County. Before that case, there was Dolores Cruz Gomez versus the city of Watsonville, a case that set the precedent to challenge at-large elections in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal. It was appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. But that was another courageous story of a young Latina who led the way along with this other paralegal named Waldo Rodriguez and Patricia Leal in Watsonville, because for many decades several Latinos ran, but nobody could ever win office. They always ending up at the bottom of the ballot. But the courageous story of Cruz Gomez, I just spoke about it as we were celebrating the Voting Rights Act on the floor of the State Assembly just a few days ago. And I talked about Dolores Cruz Gomez because these are the courageous people whose names are not often mentioned. But they were the ones who really opened the doors for so many of us. Dolores Cruz Gomez was the lead plaintiff, and when the case was won because of Joaquin's work, she ran for office on the city council. But then she was demonized and she was attacked, she was blacklisted, and even her landlord attempted to evict her from her house so she would not live in the city council district that she was running for. Dolores Cruz Gomez never won office. We honored her just a few years ago in Watsonville. But to this day, every time I speak and I talk about the Voting Rights Act, I talked about Dolores and I talked about the many other courageous people who stood up. So people like me, like Luis Alejo and Karina Cervantes and Felipe Hernandez and all these folks, Mickey Luna, all these communities that have district elections today could now be serving in leadership roles in our own community. So I have a lot to really thank. Can we all give a big round of applause to Joaquin Avila for coming back? And we're here to show love. We're here to show respect. Everybody step up to honor Joaquin Avila, everybody. Thank you very much, Joaquin. I love you, bro. So this, I'm very humble. I'd have to say, I really, I came here to really pay my respect to a really great man. Thanks, Joaquin. Because we take it for granted sometimes having being able to serve our communities in this capacity. But if it wasn't for people like Joaquin standing up and leading our community, using the law to make sure we had equal protection under the law, that we had our voting rights respected, that minorities could have an opportunity to just dream, to run and be the decision makers in their own community at all levels of government. That's the vision of that Joaquin Avila had. And not only did he lead these cases among the nation's highest court, but in 2001 he worked with Senator Richard Polanco, who was then the chairman of the Latino Legislative Caucus. He said, we could have laws that are even more effective under state law to address these same legal battles that he was fighting in the federal courts. And so in 2001, with his leadership, and he was there going to every hearing, going to the fiscal committees, the floor debates, he worked with Senator Polanco to make the California Voting Rights Act a reality in 2001. And till this day, it has been the most transformative piece of legislation in California history that has forced a lot of jurisdictions to switch to district elections, to give a fair chance to a lot of minorities to serve in office. I was just with former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa in the Central Valley. That's where I'm coming from, Firebaugh. But I was talking to some elected officials. Justine, a very small committee, just switched to district elections, and there's several Latino elected officials. Modesto recently switched to district elections, and now one of our good friends who is formerly serving here, he's serving on the Modesto City Council because of the California Voting Rights Act, and this tool is being used all over the state to make transformative changes that is empowering minority voters. But I'm here to present a recognition on behalf of the California State Assembly. We have a recognition to present. A lot of articles, a lot of law reviews, pieces have been written about Joaquin's work, and everyone who knows anything about politics throughout the American Southwest knows that Joaquin is the reason why many of us stand here till this day. And all the former chairmen from Cruz Bustamante to Antonio Villaraigosa to Fabian Nunez to John Perez, all these folks who served in these top leadership roles in the California legislature, all recognize Joaquin's work. But I wanted to present something because he's given many titles, but we wanted to present this to him on behalf of the California State Assembly. I, Assemblymember Luis Alejo, in honor of passing the California Voting Rights Act of 2001 and leading many landmark voting rights cases, including Dolores Cruz Gomez versus City of Watsonville, 1988, and Vicky Lopez versus Monterey County in 1999. You have opened doors for so many Latinos and Latinas to serve in elected office throughout the Golden State. California thanks you for being a lifelong champion of Latino political empowerment and voting and civil rights for all Californians. And today you are hereby declared as California's voting rights gladiator. Thank you very much, Joaquin Avila, our gladiator of voting rights. We also wanted to present a flag that was flown over the Capitol to you in honor of your recognition by the California State Assembly. And we also have a nice, beautiful clock with the California logo on it, representing the time. As time has gone on, these great battles that happened throughout the history. And I think it's important for all elected officials, but especially the young ones, to know that we didn't get here just by chance. We got here because people were courageous and sacrificed and did the hard work to open so many doors for all of us. So I'm very humbled, Joaquin, to be next to you and to really say thank you for allowing a young Latino elected official from Watsonville, born and raised in Watsonville, to now be serving as a Latino caucus chairman in Sacramento. Thank you very much, my brother.
I am so humbled and so proud to be here. Excuse me, I'm a little hoarse right now, but fired up, really fired up. When I first started doing voting rights work back in 1974, I started off as a staff attorney with the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, and I never wanted to do a voting rights case. When I got first exposed to it, they were just so complicated, required a lot of resources, a lot of time, and so on. And I said, no, not for me. I want to just do simple, straightforward cases. And so when I started working at MALDEF, my litigation director, my immediate boss, said, we're going to give you some cases, and one of which was a voting rights case against the city of San Fernando in LA. And I said, you know, I don't do voting rights cases. And he thoughtfully, he said to me, he says, Joaquin, I'm not asking you a question. So I did my first voting rights case in the city of San Fernando, and for the next 2 years, up until '76, I worked on that case. We unfortunately, we did not win that case, and we lost it at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals as well. And during those 2 years, I started going to Tejas and to West Texas, South Texas, and I started going to little towns. I don't know how many of you, if any of you are here from Texas, but I went to places like Van Horn, Sanderson, Rock Springs, where I got chased out of town, and that's a separate story for another celebration.
Did you deserve it?
Of course, I earned it. I started. Then I became president of the organization, and I started working on an amendment to the Federal Voting Rights Act in 1982 in Washington, along with several other 100 voting rights advocates from across the country. And we were able to change the statute to make it less difficult for us to challenge discriminatory at-large election systems. And the first case we filed was against the city of Watsonville. And we lost that case at the trial court, but this time we won at the Ninth Circuit. And once we won that case, it sent reverberations throughout the state. And then I was, at the same time, I was working with members of the community here. Jesse Sanchez, a former, who passed away unfortunately at a very young age. He was an attorney and wanted me to focus on Salinas. And so that's why I started working here in Salinas. And so the city council case fortunately settled, and then I started working on the board of supervisors, and then the case that had 2 appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court, where I had the good fortune to be arguing the case before the Rehnquist court, and I had the just. You know, I had the attitude, I'm straight out of Compton. I was a Chicano with an attitude. Because for the first case, I went up there and the clerk of the court took all of the attorneys that were going to be arguing that day and put us into a room where they would read the etiquette before the Supreme Court. And they even hand out little booklets, you know, about the etiquette before the Supreme Court, how to address each justice, and how to start your argument. And in very bold letters, it said, you start, once your case is called, you start your case with, Mr. Chief Justice, may it please the court. And if you don't do it that way, you'll get reprimanded. And I didn't want to get reprimanded. And so, in a moment of levity, I raised my hand and I wanted to ask a question. And I said to the clerk of the court, what happens if the Chief Justice mispronounces your name? Can you correct him? And the person who was my co-counsel and who helped me prepare for the argument looked at me. He was sitting right next to me, and he said, and he, looks could kill. I would be dead. And so I was just, you know, trying to loosen up the place because everybody was nervous. Right? And to my surprise, the clerk says, "Wait a minute, I'll go ask." So he'd gone for a long time. Finally, he comes back, and everybody's just waiting for him to respond, and he says, yes, you can correct him. And so my co-counsel was sitting next to me, making sure I wouldn't ask another dumb question. And so they call up the case, and I'll never forget this. Chief Justice Rehnquist calls up the case, so I'll go up there. And I'm getting ready to say, Mr. Chief Justice, may it please the court. And he says, Mr. Avila, am I pronouncing your name correctly? And it threw me off. It threw off my argument. I said, I didn't know whether to say yes, Mr. Chief Justice, may it please the court, or Mr. Chief Justice, may it please the court, yes. It seemed like an eternity, but I was able to get through it. And fortunately, we won that argument. And it came out with a very important decision. It was a 9-0, a unanimous decision. Even Justice Clarence Thomas voted for it. And we were all taken aback by that. And then the second time, we weren't so fortunate. We got an 8-1 decision. And Justice Thomas was a dissenter in that case. And from Monterey County and the decisions that came out of here, and you know, word spread out through the communities across the whole state. I had my office in Fremont at that time, and I would get a call at least once a week from various communities asking me to go out there. And I developed very good friendships, and one of which is Mickey Luna from Hollister. And you know, we were gung-ho at that time because we had won the Watsonville decision on appeal, and we had gotten settlements in Salinas and the Board of Supervisors, and with the municipal court system, that we wanted to go forward with the litigation. And Mickey very wisely council, no, we want you to come up here and just talk to the city council. I don't think that a lawsuit is necessary. Just talk to them. They'll listen to reason. And so we followed her advice, and I and other members of my office, we would go to Hollister, and which seemed like for several city council meetings, and they finally agreed to put it on the ballot, and it passed, and so now they have district elections. And it's now my understanding that Mickey's sitting on the city council, which is tremendous, because Daniel Dodge was my paralegal at the office in Fremont and in Milpitas. And when I first heard that he'd gotten elected to the city council in Watsonville, I just said, wow.
Couldn't believe it.
Wow, fantastic. I must be doing important work. And then he became mayor, and I said, wow, that's even better. And so I got the series of awards, and one of which is from the MacArthur Foundation. They call them the Genius Awards, and so I got a Genius Award in 1996, and I was so proud of that, because now my voting rights peers and advocates couldn't call me an idiot anymore.
So that way they can see themselves, because we would like to, down the road.
One thing I can say
That's
about
what they did want.
my strengths are that I was a strategic thinker for voting rights advocacy. And so sometimes I would come out with some really weird ideas, which weren't well accepted. But after I got that award, I would just say, hey, wait a minute, I'm a certified genius. Then I got an award from the Mexican government called an Otley Award. And it's an award that they gave me for my voting rights work and for the help that I had given in advancing and promoting the voting rights of the descendants of Mexican immigrants. And when I received that award in Dallas with the Hispanic National Bar Association, I said to myself, hey, I'm going international. And so I've been international. But coming back to Salinas is a special moment for me, because I wish I could say it was just myself, but it was a team of people that helped me throughout this time period. Now it's like over 40 years. 40 years of my professional career have been dedicated toward the right to vote for the Latino community. And I often get nervous about coming to events like this, because I owe so much money to so many people that provided funds when I needed them to pursue these cases. And because I was doing this in a private attorney capacity, I became super efficient, and my staff became super efficient. And so I would rely on their judgments to bring the cases and to filter them out and show me the good ones, and we would aggressively pursue them. And the highlight of my career was trying to get a state voting rights act enacted before the California legislature. And it was through the good work of State Senator Richard Polanco, who was the majority leader at the time, and Saeed Ali, his chief of staff, that they took my idea and ran with it. And I'll never forget the discussion I had with him before the bill was drafted. I said, we got to get the private bar involved in this. And the only way we can do that is by having a mandatory fees award. And which means if we win the case, the jurisdiction has to pay for our fees. And we should have what is called a fees multiplier. So if you get $100 in a fee, you become a multiple. And I was saying, we want a triple fee multiplier. And he just shook his head and said, Joaquin, it's not going to pass if you do that. So again, I wisely followed his advice. And when it came out of the Senate committee, I was in Sacramento, and I'll never forget this. He came in, and he's, I can't do this right now, but he stuck out his arms like a plane, and he was so happy. He came in buzzing around, and he said, "We have liftoff." And so the bill got out of the Senate, and then it came over to the Assembly, where he made some changes, then it went back to the Senate, where it passed, and then it was before Governor Gray Davis's desk for signature. And I was at a conference in Phoenix, and mind you, I had started working on this act for about 12 years. And so finally, it got before the governor's desk. And at this Phoenix conference, I got a call from the governor's office. And some of his legal staff had a lot of questions. And of course, I became very nervous about the kinds of questions they were asking. So after we finished the call, I called Senator Richard Polanco, and I said, "Senator, you need to go across the hall and talk to the governor, because I think he might actually veto the bill." And I don't know what Senator Richard Polanco did, but he went across the hall, and the governor signed it. I've never asked him, what he did in exchange for that signature. And I'll let the historians debate that. But so as a result of that act, then I saw it my mission and my obligation to try to get a similar act passed in the state of Washington, where I'm at now. And then from Washington, we're going to go to Colorado. And then from Colorado, we're going to go to Texas, and then to Arizona. And I feel that if we're able to get good acts enacted in those states, we'll make a tremendous change, so that by the year 2032, you have to think long-term when you're doing these cases. By the year 2032, we're going to have a very dynamite, politically vibrant Latino community in the Southwest. I don't know what they'll do, back, maybe they'll try to take back the land or and they'll blame me for it. So, anyway, but right now, my greatest legacy is to speak to young students, like I did a couple of days ago, or day before yesterday, with the Dream Academy, because I see my responsibility is lighting up the torch and handing it over to the next generation of future attorneys, future law students, future students, to get that sparkle in their eye, so that they can carry this mantle, carry this ball and push it forward, so that they can be the creative ones back, in the coming decades. Because this is going to take several decades, this fight, and we're not going to see it done in our lifetime, or my lifetime. But at least I'm confident that the fight will be carried on. When you have people in the state legislature like Luis Alejo, and you have county board of supervisors like Simon Salinas and Armenta and Sergio Sanchez, who's with the city council here, I am fully confident that we're going to ultimately prevail, and that we'll have a Chicano governor, Chicana or Chicano U.S. senators. I'm fully confident that we will see the day when that will come. And so I very humbly accept and thank you very much for taking the time. I know that people have come from long distances. Vicky's here from Hollister. Daniel Dodges from Watsonville. Well, not too far, but Daniel Dodges from Watsonville. And John Arriagas from Sacramento. Some folks that are from other places, and I really appreciate it. You do tremendous honor to me. And I'm really very touched. Thank you.
Thank you.